Okay, as I mentioned, I want to do a film review of a film that I've been familiar with for a long time, and it's very much related to the fall of the Berlin Wall, which has been on my mind a lot in the last few days. The film is Goodbye Lenin. Now, I've had this DVD for years. It's one of the DVDs I've had for the longest period. This is a film you really need to see if you've got any interest in that period of European history and world history for that matter. Just a quick rundown of the basics of the film, and then a bit about the synopsis and my thoughts on it. So it's directed by Wolfgang Becker. It's a German film directed by Wolfgang Becker, and the lead roles are Alex, played by Daniel Brühl, his sister Ariane, played by Maria Simon, their mother Christiane, played by Katrin Sass, and other supporting roles include Chulpan Kamatova, Florian Lucas, Alexander Bayer, Burkhard Klausner, I believe that's pronounced, Michael Gwizdek. This is a 2003 film, and of course Daniel Brühl, you may know him from such films as Rush, where he played the late Niki Lauda, the Formula 1 driver. The film was critically acclaimed. It got a lot of awards, including the European Film of 2003, European Actor to Daniel Brühl for 2003, the European Screenwriter for Bernd Lichtenberg, I believe that's pronounced, Best Foreign Language Films at the BAFTAs. So a range of accolades. So basically the idea of this film, and obviously as I say with all my film reviews there's some spoilers here, it's set in the closing months of 1989, the Monday night marches, which were sort of leading up to the eventual collapse of the Berlin Wall. So the setting is, it kind of starts off with these childhood nostalgic videos, and it's idealistic mother, single mother, who ostensibly we learn is estranged from her husband, and her children are led to believe that he went off with his West German mistress, which turns out to not be the truth. I'll come to that later on. But basically she's an idealistic socialist. She still believes in the old system, although like her children she's bit disillusioned with the authoritarianism of it, but she believes in the socialist principles behind it. So her oldest son, Daniel, and his sister, actually she's his older sister I should say, Ariane, are like a lot of young East Germans. They're getting disillusioned with this, and shortly before the wall actually comes down, Alex is arrested, and seeing this actually causes his mother to have a heart attack. She's on the way to a theatre performance and she sees him getting arrested and beaten, and she has a heart attack. And because of the chaos of the night, she's unattended and she slips into a coma. And then one of the East German police officers tells Alex his mother's in a coma. He goes to the hospital, and basically it transpires that the shock, any sort of sudden shock, the doctor says, will possibly give her a fatal second heart attack. So the idea is they're supposed to keep her from any sort of sudden shock. Well, of course, this is the closing months of 1989. She's a dedicated socialist, and what happens? You know, it's a fall of the communist system, and the wall comes down. So as Alex and his sister adapt to this new world, she meets a West German boyfriend who him and Alex have quite a tense relationship with. He falls in love with a young nurse from the Soviet Union who treated his mother. They're dealing with this new world, capitalism. His sister starts working in a fast food chain, and they're dealing with this new world. Now, meanwhile, they realise that if his mother is to find out, if Christiane, the mother, if she finds out that the wall has collapsed, it would just be too overwhelming for her. So they create a whole facade with the help of his friend, to basically imply that rather than the wall has come down, there's gradual changes going on. And they put on this whole big facade to the point of trying to get products from the old East Germany, making fake newscasts, and there's some very funny bits in the film. Now, the film is best described as a tragi-comedy in the sense that it's obviously dealing with a serious subject, but it's using humour to do that, and I think it gets this across very well. I remember having a friend at university from East Germany, and she was quite left-wing, and she really liked the film. I think it is a very good example of the German notion of, I believe it's called Ostalgie, which is kind of this nostalgia for the East and the nostalgia for the old communist world. Because in the film you see the brutality of the communist system, you see how they beat down these young people who are demanding changes and more freedom, and then the collapse of the system. But you also see the overwhelming sort of impact it has on young East Germans and East Germans in general, and the nostalgia for the old system. There's one bit, for example, where Alex and his friend are taking a job as selling satellite dishes, and they have the old community spirit of the East, whereas the boss is kind of like, what's wrong with these guys? Like, you know, he can't grasp that sort of community social spirit that maybe was more prevalent in the East. Who knows? But I think one of the best things about the film is, well, anyway, I should finish the synopsis. It gets to the point where she eventually sort of semi finds out the truth. One day, whilst Alex is sleeping and just watching her, they've brought her home at this point. She wanders out and she sees a bust of Lenin being carried away. And they even had to explain the big banner of Coca-Cola was about a partnership. A partnership between East and West. They even convince her that there is West German refugees coming into the East, which is incredible. So they managed to basically hoodwink her all this time, but she eventually sort of finds out the truth. She goes into the elevator, she sees neo-Nazi sort of graffiti, and she's shocked by this. And she sees a young man in Chas where he's from, and he says from Wuppertal, which of course is a West German city. So she's clearly overwhelmed by this. And they eventually find out that actually the father hadn't betrayed them. What actually happened was he had been denounced by the party, and she just didn't want to deal with the shame of that, so she made up this story about him having a West German mistress. And so they feel betrayed by this. They feel that they've been protecting her all this time from the truth, when actually she's also been lying to them, but in a perhaps more underhand way. So both Alex and his sister feel betrayed by this. The mother passes away eventually, and they kind of release her ashes in a rocket. There's a whole cosmology theme with this film, because one of the backdrops is that as a child, Alex's hero was the East German cosmonaut Sigmund Jähn. And there's one bit in the film where he gets into a taxi and he believes the man driving the taxi is Sigmund Jähn. The man says he's just, people mistake that all the time, and he's not Sigmund Jähn. By coincidence, the actual Sigmund Jähn passed away a few months ago, and I only realised that Googling him when I was watching this, so that's a little bit of a coincidence. He was the first, not just East German, but German in space. One of the most powerful things about this film, I think, is the score, the soundtrack by Jan Tiersen. It's beautiful. It's really done in a very powerful way. And there's a bit where it kind of shows, again, these nostalgic images of the East. And Alex says, I always remember the East with my mother. And she's just passed away at this point. So they kind of imply that it is by choice, by the decision of the Politburo, that they have kind of brought down the wall, rather than basically the pressure of the people. And so they kind of, even up to the last minute, kind of hoodwink her into this. But check this film out, Goodbye Lenin. It's funny, it's sad, and there's a bit where they reconcile with their father. Alex reconciles with his father. It's very moving. And he tells his father not to tell his mother the truth, because he explains that it would sort of be too overwhelming for her. But the sad side of it is shows the sort of things that people had to deal with the East German Stasi. But I think it's a very powerful film, and the score, that beautiful orchestral music, it really is something. I mean, I think it's possible to watch this film and understand that concept of nostalgia whilst also having contempt for communism, as I do. So check it out. Goodbye Lenin, 2003. It's quite a unique film. I've never seen anything like it. To combine that sort of serious subject matter with comedy, and it's a German film as well. Here in Britain we often think, the Germans don't have a sense of humour, but there is some genuinely funny bits in this film. So I would say check it out. Goodbye then in 2003.